Well, this is a sweet night, cozy in here. A lot of love, a lot of people that I love. Stephanie and I love here. So grateful to be able to be in this room and to be with you all. And like Stephanie prayed on the way over, I just really want to, I just want this to feel like a little living room kind of visit, and not expecting to sing real well, but I'm expecting to sing from my heart and invite you to join. Suzanne and I will sing a couple of songs and then tell you kind of a fun story. And really, really a neat story. So, I just want to invite you to breathe in the Spirit that is here tonight. And, and get whatever it is that God might want you to get from this, I'm here for a reason tonight, and this is a special night in a lot of ways. And, so if, I believe God is here, I certainly invite Him here. We invite Him here now. And so great warmth here, and so I'm grateful for everyone that's come and everyone who's here in spirit as well.
So love life comes down to just one thing, that's to know you, oh Jesus, and to make you known. And to make you known.
This place and soak in the fellowship of the Lord here with you. And I believe that God wants me to tell you this story. I began blogging within minutes of my seizure. I've never blogged before. I entered the blogosphere very quickly. And it's funny, I got out of surgery and I was in ICU, and within like a couple of hours I woke up and all my stuff was gone. On my iPad, my iPhone, my computer. I call Steph, it's the only phone number I could remember. She's like at Whole Foods buying some organic something or other. I'm like, I need my iPad, I need a blog. And she's like, you just got out of surgery, I need to blog. I needed to. And so I get to tell the story in that forum, and I get to tell the story in this forum, and that's great. And this is sort of there's some elements of a Joseph-like story in this, the same hands that painted the mosaic of that Joseph story. I see those same creative and even humorous hands in the midst of what Stephanie and I are going through, and it's beautiful. Not surprisingly, I think I read the Joseph story, or had it read to me probably 5 different times over the summer. so it was coming anyway. As a matter of fact, we were reading it last night. In March of this year, and you could put up that first slide of that thing. So in March of this year, I started working for a company that is creating a medical device. They're a surveillance company. They create like these cameras, commercial cameras. They put on buildings to watch people, and there's a guy in a room that watches like 20 people at once. And this is a friend of mine dear friend of mine who used to work for me at my first company in California, and he was kind of a junior partner in that, and he invited me along in March to help him with this company because they were converting this surveillance camera system into a patient monitoring system, so they could put these devices like behind me in a patient room, so that if somebody was at risk of falling out of bed because they had too many meds, or because they just got out of surgery, or they were a seizure risk, or whatever, fall risk, they wanted to put those in there so one nurse could watch like 10 rooms and see if something was going to happen, because it's very costly on a hospital. If somebody falls in a hospital, in most cases the insurance won't pick that up. That's like their fault, the hospital's fault. So it's very expensive. And I guess by way of full disclosure, I still have some interest in this product, so if you buy one of these, I get some money from it. But so he asked me to help him out, and I was excited to do that because it allowed me to put my skills to some work. And in March, I started working for this company, and I worked my tail off. It was almost bizarre how interested I was, got involved in this company, and spent a lot of time and energy on it. And the next slide. and so in like August, well, I was getting kind of wiped out by January, or July, but in August we went and we were like making kind of our inaugural installation, and this guy's named Scott here, who was with me in Cincinnati, one of the guys from the company, and sweet Christian guy, and we'd gone to this hospital in Fairfield, Ohio, to install these boogers, and it was our first sort of go at it. And so we spent all week training nurses and stuff in there. And but I had been feeling pretty tired through this whole sequence. It had been a long 10-day trip. I was tired before I got there. And matter of fact, I'd been tired going into the whole sequence of this, and so I couldn't really help this guy out very much, and so when at the end of the week I felt like I owed him at least a dinner. He kind of covered me through all the trainings and everything, and so I said, well, we can go out to dinner as long as we got at like 4:30. So on Thursday night that week we went out at 4:30 and went to Papados, and in the midst of that night I had a very bizarre experience where I had a seizure. It started with my throat closing up and my face starting to move towards the ceiling while the rest of my body went towards the floor. And it was very scary, and woke up in this ambulance, and it was a kind of a bizarre sequence, but it was beautiful how God actually met me in the midst of that sequence, because when that happened, I thought I was having a stroke. My face was moving away, my hands were starting to shake, my legs was shaking, and I tried to write out again on my iPad, stroke. And as I was doing it, my sadness in my spirit was that, wow, Stephanie and Jonah may not see their husband and father are the same way again, because, that may happen. And I know in my spirit I asked God, please don't let that happen. Excuse me. And then I woke up, and I'm looking at these Calendar Handsome guys, and we're whirring along the freeway, and those things are like tin cans, sardine cans on wheels. They're not made well, and you feel the air flowing through as you're zooming, and these guys are asking me, do you know what's happening? Do you know what's happening? But I could feel the strength in my side and my face, and I had felt this warmth that I felt multiple times. Felt it was the Lord, and just felt comforted, and I knew that He had already answered that prayer, and I didn't have a stroke. So, but I did end up in this next picture, back in the same ward that I had been training in all week long, the observation ward at this same hospital, all wired up to this, to these devices. And then the next slide, they put the fall wrist sticker on me so that I was actually a candidate to be surveilled by my own device, which, I think is really kind of, was kind of funny. And then the next slide. And so they said, well, we don't really know. There's something there, it may be an infection or it may be something else. But by the end of the day, they were really talking tumor. And Stephanie came up to Cincinnati, and within a day or two, she got up there to sort of help to ferry me back, because they wanted to evaluate me in Austin and pursue, getting this thing cut out, which then they did. Next slide. You can't really see it, which is actually a benefit for you guys, because it's so they cut in there, and we had a great guy introduce us to a great doctor, surgeon in Austin, and the Lord really was with the whole sequence of this thing as it started to play out. But I had known that this was coming, and that's where it really kind of got interesting. But and when Stephanie came up to Cincinnati, we had some prayer time together, and an enormous faith overcame both of us, and it was really a really sweet time. We really felt that it was just a kind of an uncanny deal. So when we got out of ICU, I only vaguely remember this, but they've told me now that they said, they sent in somebody to tell me that this is, like a stage 4 malignant brain cancer. I mean, it's like a major deal. And I said, that's not surprising at all. I mean, the Lord did not send me into this to give, to have a benign tumor removed by the best hands in Austin. I mean, we're going through something. I know it. And He's going to get glory through what we're going through. And I really believe He's going to heal me, but the beautiful thing about it is not that He's going to heal me of cancer if He hasn't already, or if He isn't in the very near future. It's that He healed me of the fear of death, and healed me of the fear of cancer, and reminded me about a lot of things that I think that we know about death, or should know about death, because we sing about it and talk about it all the time, but I think in our spirits we really don't believe it to some degree. So anyways, that was really the surprise. And then maybe the next slide. And so then, I started to get a prolific sense of some ideas and writings and thinkings about what the Lord was taking me through and teaching me. And I think some of these words are from Him. I think that these are important writings, and not all of them. Some of them are really, really silly. But, I want to tell you about some of the things that came up in the sequence, but I invite you to go to this site and read some of especially the early ones, because I think that God was teaching me some things in there. A couple of them here, like this reluctant bride, is a story about the groom with a capital G who's in the chapel and he's waiting for his beloved bride to show up for the wedding, and he was, they were betrothed together, and he was so looking forward to this day. This was going to kick off their eternal life together in bliss. And she's late, and then he hears a car outside, and there's scuffling, and there's some wailing, and there's some crying, and he goes and looks out the window, and she's like scratching and trying to do everything to keep from going into church. And I think to some degree we panic about end of life. We're all gonna die, right? So we need to, one, get in grip with that. I mean, we are going to go, and then let's not go kicking and screaming. I don't know if I don't want the groom to look at me that way. I mean, the beautiful thing that happened to me in the sequence was, one, between the seizure and the surgery, there were times where I did not know where the next breath was coming. I wasn't sure. That was a freaky time. Plus, they had me on major meds and stuff. So, I mean, there were times I had to hang up the phone from a loved one that I was talking to and ask Bob Yarbrough to hold my hand and pray for me for 10 seconds just so I would get my breath. And then I'd get my breath and I'd be fine. Or in the hospital with Suzanne or Sue or Justin or others. Sweet times of and God just coming in. So one of the neat things was that pictures that I got was that, I think that death is like this dark black door that says death on it. And we know, or we're certainly supposed to know, that on the other side of that door is a huge party with a banquet and a bunch of, hopefully one chair with our name on it that's empty. And, and our job is to kind of get ourselves to the door with as much dignity as we can, even though we know it's going to be like running the gauntlet, and then get through the door, and hopefully we get in the door, and then they're like, oh, here's your chair, and then, okay, now the party starts. But we have to bring all of our faith and all of our stuff to get to the door. And what I think I got to learn here is that, no. God is actually going to really be with us every single step of the way up to the door. Right? So we can rely on Him all the way up to the door. So we don't have to be afraid either of what's on the other side of the door or even the path to the door. And so by releasing fear and giving us some verses that we can really, really trust Him and rely on, it's given us a new foundation for our life going forward, which is great. And those verses that He's given aren't really super obscure verses. I bet you've heard them. One of them is, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. We take the first step. We trust in Him. Forget about our own, thinkings about how it's supposed to all work out. Just acknowledge Him every which way, and He'll just direct the paths. And we have seen that happen and lived that, and it's been fab. I mean, it's been really a great way to go. That was neat. The next one that is really a worthy verse and a command is, be anxious for nothing, but in everything, through prayer and thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ. That, that is a powerful verse. Be anxious for nothing. I mean, how much time can we reclaim in our day if we are anxious for nothing? I mean, that is just a beautiful, beautiful verse. So even like when I'm driving with Steph. Steph's driving now because I can't drive. I get to practice this verse all the time, especially in the rain. But but I am learning, and I'm doing it, and I am enjoying it, and I am enjoying saying, okay, fine, Lord, I'm just going to let my request known that she's going to realize that she's about to be off the road, and then this peace overcomes me. So I joke about it, but honestly, I do think that we can practice that discipline. I think it's a promise to us. I think it's an indicator of the way that God wants us to live. I think He wants us to live absent of fear and anxiety. I think there's plenty of stories where He tells us that. One of those stories I don't think it's probably remarkable insight, but it seemed remarkably insightful to me at the time, was the story of the mustard seed. And how Christ said, if you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could move this mountain from this place to this other place. And I didn't go and study what all the other preachers have said about this. They probably all said it a million times. But what I think he was saying there was, he was saying, you don't have any faith. He was saying that to them. He was saying you don't have any. Because if you, and he's almost being sarcastic, he said, because if you had any, even the size of this little tiny, tiny, tiny mustard seed, you could move it from there to there. It's like, this stuff is nitroglycerin. It is like super, super duper powerful stuff. If you had any, you would know it. That's what he was saying. He's a low tolerance for lack of faith. Peter says, Lord, bid me to come. If he has enough faith to ask, Lord, bid me to come, get out and walk on the water. I mean, that was some faith. Ask me. I'm not sure if I would ask him. He gets out, he starts walking, he starts to sink. He looks around, he starts to sink, and the Lord says, oh, you have little faith. I mean, he doesn't cut him a lot of slack. He just. So I think that if you look at that, how many different times he says to people, where is your faith? I just fed 5,000 and you're worried about eating or whatever, And I just think we just so often go to that place. And I think what he wants us, this whole story is about faith in him. And I think that that's how we please him. Without faith, you cannot please God. Right? You just can't please him. But the good news is that he will give it to you. Right? He's the giver of the faith. It's not of ourselves, lest anyone should boast. So, anyways, those are two great verses. And the third is, seek ye first the kingdom of God and all his righteousness, and all these other things that you worry about and you're storing up for heaven, whatever, for yourself, they'll all be added unto you. Well, so I'll put all those three verses together. Trust in God first. Don't be anxious about anything. Don't really worry about the resources side of things, because I'm not responsible for sort of having to build up my 401k so that in case God really doesn't exist, at least I've got that nest egg, I think he's just got a totally different approach, and I feel like in the midst of this, at some level, I feel like Solomon, that we got lucky and chose right, and he said, I'll give you both wisdom and riches. I'm going to give you the insights as to what's coming through this, and then I'm going to give you a ministry that's going to really, really be powerful for the kingdom. So, I got to keep my eye on the clock here, since that's page 1. So 10 years ago, and I will, I promise. So 10 years ago, in March of 2002, I had been feeling really, really bad, actually since about December of that earlier year, November almost, I guess. Jonah hadn't been born yet, and so I had sought to get some life insurance to kind of, give Stephanie some more security. I think she probably knew properly that she had some reasons to wonder whether I was going to be there for her when the baby came, so I thought, well, at least an insurance policy will help. And so, but they denied me, and because I had some raised liver enzymes or something, and that they were concerned about, and I had been feeling this low-grade kind of buzz in my system, kind of like somebody put a car battery up to my spine, and it was just always going on its own clock. I wake up in the morning just as tired as I was the night before. And one time I woke up in March, and I had this sort of slight numbness on my face and on my hand, and I used that to get into the doctor faster, and that is a way to get into the doctor faster. You tell them that, you're right in there. And immediately he sent me down to go get an MRI. And right away, I didn't tell Steph any of this, and I went over the MRI. I was a little nervous about the MRI, because the MRI is, the place where, you're the torpedo and you're going into the torpedo tube. And I was worried about being claustrophobic because, when I was little, my 3 older brothers would put pillowcases over my head, or, in love, they would lock me in a closet for hours and stuff. And so, claustrophobia sort of is, was part of my experience, and I was a little nervous about that. And, and I used to have, bad dreams when I was a little kid. I used to, when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, I had this one particular dream that was just very bizarre. It was very mechanical. There was like these milk bottles that were moving along in sequence across the ceiling and down the walls, and there was this ratchety sound happening, and this whirring sound, and this starting and this stopping, and starting and stopping, and all along. And so, so here I was. Well, they put me on this MRI machine, they stick me in there, and then as soon as they turn that thing on, I realized the sound is the sound of my dreams when I was 5, 6, 7 years old. I mean, the MRI is a very, very distinctive sound, if anybody's ever been in one. They have just this weird series of things that it's just very distinctive. And I knew immediately that, wow, that is freaky. God is going to walk me through a serious trial here. It's probably cancer, because MRIs meant cancer to me. My parents both died of cancer, and so have a whole bunch of other folks. And they had a lot of MRIs. So I knew that. So then driving home, I was very, very concerned, not so much for me, I don't think. I was concerned for Stephanie. She was 3 months away from giving birth to Jonah. It had already been a hard pregnancy. This would be really, really hard news. So I was on Electra Drive in Lakeway, and I remember exactly where I was, and I was hanging on the ceiling saying, Lord, please, can we put this off? I just think this is really going to be hard. And I got home and still hadn't told Stephanie I'd gone to the MRI, and the phone rang, the doctor called, and he said, the MRI is clear. I was certainly relieved. I didn't think it would be. And I went to bed, and I felt like I'd been touched by God, and I just fell asleep, and I slept for like 2 days straight. And after about 48 hours, I woke up, and I was completely clear. I mean, that buzzing was gone. I just felt fine. And, I probably thank God, but I honestly didn't even remember my own prayer. I just thought, okay, I had a low-grade virus, and it takes 2 days of sleep to kill low-grade viruses. That's what happened to me. I kind of forgot all about the MRI and the sequence. I mean, the MRI was clear, so maybe I got that wrong, whatever. Now I think it's different, in retrospect. So we were in Ohio at the end of July, just this last July, for a friend of mine's father's funeral. And my wife had the first chance to kind of debrief with my brother, who had lost his wife after a near 2-year battle with cancer of unknown primary, a very painful, very long struggle that they went through. Many of you folks prayed for Susan, and she passed away about, maybe 18 months ago. Anyways, we were at his house, and she had this like 2 or 3 hour opportunity to just sort of grieve with him and allow him to sort of go through his love for Susan and whatever. And she came to bed, and it was just a very sweet night. And I took her hand, and I'm 50, was 50, now I'm 51. And and we started to pray, and I just prayed to God. I just said, I just don't want to live insignificantly. I don't want to waste these gifts that you've given me. I don't want to be out of the game and out of the stadium. I don't want to be 70 and praying, Lord, what do you want me to do? Is there something you want me to do? I really earnestly said, I want to be used. I mean, I want to be in the game. And I said the words to the song that when they were sang here the first time, when I was worship leader here, they really touched me. And Jamea Blood sang the song, and one of the lines says, I will go through the fire if you want me to. And I said those words out loud to the Lord that night, holding Stephanie's hands, and I said, I will go through the fire if you want me to, and I will trust you with the result. So, since I have you here in my living room, let me just sing that song. Pathway is broken, and the signs are unclear, and I don't know the reason why you brought me here.
But just because you love me the way that you do, I'm gonna walk through the valley if you want me to. 'Cause I'm not who I was when I took my first step. So if all of these trials bring me closer to you, and I'll go through the fire if you want me to. It may not be the way I would have chosen when you lead me through a world that's not my home. But you never said it would be easy. You only said I'd never go alone. So when the whole world turns against me and I'm all by myself and I can't hear you answer my cries for help, I'll remember the suffering your love put me through, and I will go through the valley if you want me to. So, about 3 hours later, Stephanie wakes up. Yeah, her heart's racing, and she doesn't know what's happening, but she's feeling really, really bad. And so, as has happened many times, I'd lay my hands on her and rub her back and pray for her and inquire about what's happening and try and help her. And she just couldn't get comfortable all night long. In the morning, we talked to my brother, who knows the healthcare system in Akron better than anybody probably now. And he's advising us sort of where to go and where to take her and what room, what emergency place to go and everything. My phone rings. It's my doctor. He had taken my blood before I went to Ohio. And said, everything looks pretty good, but we got some raised liver enzymes here that we're kind of uncomfortable with. Same problem I had 10 years ago. And I just kind of almost chuckled in my spirit. I'm like, wow, God. It's like, don't waste any time or anything. I mean, and just really had that sense immediately that we were just on the road. And we went to that funeral. It was beautiful. Stephanie, kind of emerged. Even took a few days before she kind of emerged from that sequence, and now has like become the ultimate caregiver, and her own pains have been put on back burner because of what's going on with me. But I had some great sharing times with some people that weekend. I told my nursery school buddy that weekend, leaving the elevator at the hospital when Stephanie was there, I said, I told him about those childhood dreams. I said, something's coming, something's coming. And it was about a month later then I had that seizure. So, so we've learned some incredible lessons in this sequence. God is faithful to go through the valley with you. Death is not and should not be so scary to Christians. God will give you and those around you the faith that you need when you need it. And His promises are true. You can trust in the Lord. You can be anxious for nothing. You can expect Him to deliver. So I think God is going to heal me, but the bigger deal is that He's healed me of the fear of death. And He's given me a mission, us a mission. So this has really opened up a ton of energy and resources and really the future for us, which is really exciting. I mean, it's amazing to me how good this can look. And we're really no longer kind of padding all of our accounts in case God doesn't show up in the end. And we've determined to swing for the fences for Him and trust in Him and store up treasure in heaven. I think we're all like the rich young ruler at some level. I mean, that's a tough story to read, I mean, God just asked him for, everything. And again, God's not wimpy in this regard. I mean, He says, you want to be in my army? Great. Leave everything and follow me. I mean, I don't know where He says, just, give me 11% this year and then maybe kick it up to 13% next year. I mean, He said, give me everything. He is a consuming fire. He's a serious God. And, He's got serious offer on the table to us. So that prayer that I said when I was with Stephanie in that guest room at my brother's house was really the kind of culmination of a season that started right here, December of 2009, when Guy Draper spoke about getting in the game. And he talked here at some neat pace, Guy has, and he talked through sweetly, his sequence with their adopting their 2 children and their first natural son, and he talked about kind of 40 years in the faith, wondering some things that kind of haunted me was that was I doing enough for God, was writing checks really kind of enough, the inward focus of our spiritual disciplines, how much time we spend, in here on us, teaching ourselves about stuff that we already know. And reference that verse in Isaiah 1:10 where God says, and I've heard this many times before, it's just scary, where God says, I'm done with your prayers and your worship and your meetings. I'm done with all of this hoopla. Go out and serve the needy. Go out and do justice. Go fight for those that are broken. That's worship. I'm not going to be here the next big prayer service you have. I think it's a very, very stern warning anytime we hear those kinds of words. And so I'm asking myself, hey, is that me? Is that us? And I was moved by Guy's message that day, and he said, how can we get in the game if I'm huddled in my safe, cozy home with those that I love behind a firewall protecting us from the world? And to me, that's a good question. If I was going to start doing something for God, then I was going to have to start doing something. I had thought that maybe, it was enough for me just to take care of my own. But, unbelievers take care of their own too. We're not going to reach the world. The kingdom's not going to expand if we're all just taking care of our own. And so I determined coming out of that to say, I'm going to start saying yes to God first, instead of saying no, or I'll pray about that or whatever. I'm just going to start saying yes, and and trust God to make me say no if just turn it on its head a little bit, and just to start, because that was part of God's message too, is that we've got to get close to the need, we've got to get close to the people that are hurting, for our hearts to be drawn in, for God to start to flow through us. And that made sense to me, and so I began to volunteer. They asked me, and I said yes to volunteer for Discovery in September 2010. And a lot of people volunteer for that program, but it's a rugged few days to spend, but it's important because you get near some people that are hurting, and you see God moving, and it's beautiful, and you've got some skin in the game, and. So I began to say yes to some other things. And, in the scheme of things, they're small, but I think they were steps. And I think that's part of the message that God has me for you, which is that just like that mustard seed is small, and what I say is that, I got the smell of the vapor of the shadow of the mustard seed of faith. I got just this little itsy. But it was enough to really do some dramatic stuff for us. And in the same way, I think that there's immense power in our will and in our willingness to lean towards God in trust, even just a little bit. He's looking for us, I think, to make the first move. I have this vision of God being, 3 inches away from us, nose to nose, going, come on, lean towards me. Release that one other idol. Do something new for me. Show me that you trust me. You move first. We can wait him out. And eventually he may bring something to bear that forces us to move. But he's got a long time horizon, and we can use up a lot of our life being stuck in whatever posture we're trying to maintain, whatever status quo we're trying to maintain, because we think we look sideways, hey, well, I'm doing okay relative to these other people or whatever, but, and we're just we're locked down. We're locked down by securities.
And trust is somewhat just releasing that and saying, but it's not necessarily a vision I have. Is not necessarily, you got to jump all in. You just say, I'm gonna release that one little thing that you've been talking to me about, or I'm just gonna trust you, or I'm gonna, I'll go through the fire. If I didn't go jump in a fire, I just said I'd be willing to. And aren't we all supposed to be doing that? I mean, we sing, I surrender all. We sing, take my life and let it be consecrated to you. All my mites I won't hold out from you. All my treasures are yours. We sing all these songs. That's where that Isaiah 1:10 used to bother me when I was a worship leader here, because I'm singing these songs, I'm leading these songs, I'm not believing these songs. I surrender all. I mean, it wasn't even close to the truth. So who am I doing that for? Right? I mean, God is not mocked. He's not stupid. I mean, I just think he just sort of says, I'm going to Korea for a while. These people are on their knees, the fires are burning, whatever. I'll come back and check in every once in a while. Or he was remarkably offended, or he just goes, this is just Pharisee stuff. You're worried about what other people think or whatever. Don't sing that song. I think it would be a remarkable thing if we said, you know what? I'm not going to sing those words or that line if I don't really believe those words. Let's just not do it. Let's not do it. Let's just determine we're only going to sing the songs that we believe. That would be a start. But I'm not trying to come down hard or anything. I mean, all of these, a lot of songs are hard. Sometimes you don't even know what the words are until you've gotten past them. It's like, oh my God, did I just sing that? But, the church, God is definitely calling us to commitment and not a half-hearted deal. But the upside is that, he is a winner. I mean, he has everything in his power. He has all the riches. He has immense amount of promises for us. He has love unbounding for us. He is waiting and waiting and waiting to bless us. The prodigal children who come home and he pulls out all the stops, but the prodigal had to move first, and otherwise it would not have happened. Those riches are waiting there. So he is, he's worth casting yourself on and throwing yourself towards or leaning towards, And we're all in the same boat at different levels. Every day, new security regimes get established. It's like, the poor missionaries that they say, you know what, we're giving it all. The kids who say, we're going to Tasmania. Yeah, I don't care where we go, we're going. And they go to the mission field. They don't even know the language or whatever, and they're all in for God. And they get there, and they don't know their way around, and then they start teaching the school, and their kids meet some kids, and they learn where the doctor is, and he's not too bad. And then, another couple comes, and they start, they have some decent fellowship, and they're starting to make some breakthroughs, and now they've got to learn the language and stuff, whatever. And they don't get up the next morning, and they don't say, okay, Lord, where do you want me to go now? They've started, the security regime starts to, some of them do, but some of them don't. That new perimeter gets set up. It's like, oh, I don't want to leave. I don't want to go. Or you left your job because you had a moral sense that it was the right thing to do. It just wasn't the right place. And God fulfilled, God honored that and gave you a new job. And now the pay is better. And you got 2 kids in private school, and you got some other thing or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then some other real moral thing comes up. It's like, oh, maybe I'll overlook this one, Or you're a pastor in a church, and, you start making money, and, it's hard. It's just hard. Everybody's got the same deals. And as soon as you can break through one, darned if the world doesn't sort of try and reattach at all different junctures, So I don't know what the answer is to that other than daily, being willing to say, I'll do whatever. So, so that has been, it's been a beautiful lesson to learn. I'm not at all. I wouldn't go back. I don't want this cancer to have gone away as if it had not happened. I certainly think it'd be great if God just dramatically blows all the doctors' minds, that this thing is completely gone, and I'm on Larry King or whoever the new guy is, and can
and can tell the story of our great God and, to a big audience, that'd be great. I'll do it. So what holds us back to doing, to leaning towards God, one is, I think, if we get to the root of it, we don't trust Him. We think that He's going to take all of our money. He's going to force us to write some monster check. We think that He's going to send us to some foreign land that we're going to hate. That we think He's just going to get it all wrong. He just doesn't know us really. He really doesn't know what we like and what we really don't like. We think He's going to send us somewhere we don't want to go, and He's going to change us or our spouses so that they don't like us anymore. He's going to think, he's going to give us something, just a bad idea for us. I think that holds us back. I think fear, which I believe is kind of a principality. I think fear is an enemy and wants to hold us back. I wrote this on one of my blogs. I said, fear rules people. It dominates them. It controls them. It limits them, and it demeans them. It locks them in a small story, cheats them, and then mocks them about it relentlessly. It makes them act out in poor ways to cover its own tracks, stealing intimacy, purpose, vitality with every life it touches. I think fear really is it is a limiter of what God has for us. I think that it's the enemy's voice many times being the accuser or the liar in our ears saying, you can't do that because this is what's going to happen to you, or this is what would happen in the future. God won't be there for you, and you should be afraid. And clearly God says, don't be afraid of anybody except me, God. And so I think fear, and my experience has been that you can talk straight to it and say, just like a demon devil, just get out of my life. My God is bigger. Be gone. And He will flee from you, or He will have less power or something. I've certainly seen that happen. So, I think fear is a big limiter. I think the deceitfulness of riches is a big limiter. I think a lot of us just, I know I was there. I just think that, it's like, hey, I'm pretty comfortable. I actually enjoy what I got going here, I don't know if I really don't want to change that. I'm comfortable with what I've got. And so I don't trust that God's going to allow me to keep my stuff that I like. And so just the deceitfulness of riches, that somehow your life will be more fulfilling with the stuff than with the stuff of God, however He wants to give it to you. And the truth is that you can be completely wealthy and completely miserable, or you can be completely poor and completely overjoyed because God is flowing through you. The deceitfulness of riches is that true riches are not money. And we're just hung up on that one. So I think He wants all of us. I love that line that we sang, which is, all of life comes down to just one thing, and that's to know you, O Jesus, and to make you known. And I felt that the calling on my life has been evangelism. And I feel like, I definitely feel it's the call on the church in general, but specifically on certain people. This sequence came about really as, recognizing, the pattern is, recognizing that you need help. I realized that I was not happy. And I said to God, I want to make a change, and releasing your grip on stuff. And I said, I'm willing to go through the fire. I'll trust you with the result. And that's, that is the standard pattern for meeting the Lord in the first place, right? Nobody comes to Him with a whole bunch of preconditions. They just say, you know what, I'm a sinner, and I need your grace, and I need to be saved. When you come back as the prodigal son and you recommit, it's the same thing. You realize your error. You don't go back with a lot of preconditions. You just throw yourself back on the mercies of God, and He delivers you. And so that's a beautiful thing. I think it plays out probably many times in our life. I wrote here, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. So maybe, Suzanne, you want to come up and we'll just sing a couple of those songs again together. And
All I need to do is worship.
the Lord. All I